It was a quiet April morning in Darden, Tennessee. Just another day in a peaceful town where everyone knew each other. But within minutes, that tranquility shattered. A scream echoed through the woods. A young woman was seen being led away by an unknown man in camouflage. And then, nothing. Holly Bobo, a 20-year-old nursing student, vanished without a trace, leaving behind only scattered belongings and a trail of chilling, unanswered questions. For years, her case remained a haunting mystery, filled with false leads, dead ends, and shocking twists. But when the truth finally emerged, it was darker than anyone could have imagined. How could a young woman disappear in broad daylight? Who was the man last seen with her? And why did it take years to uncover the gruesome fate that awaited her? Hey, true crime fans, I'm your host Iman, and I'm thrilled to share crime tales across times with you. Each episode will explore a new case, examining the evidence and discussing the twists and turns. My goal is to create a community where we can discuss these cases, share our thoughts, and learn from each other. So, let's get started. It was the morning of April 13th, 2011, in Darden, Tennessee, a quiet rural community where doors were left unlocked, and everyone knew each other. The sun had barely risen when 20-year-old Holly Bobo, a dedicated nursing student, prepared for another day of classes. She packed her books, grabbed a coffee, and got ready to leave, just like any other morning. Her mother, Karen, had already left for work, and her father, Dana, was away on a job site. That left Holly and her older brother, Clint, at home. As she stepped out onto the porch, the stillness of the morning was suddenly shattered by an unusual noise, a distressed scream. It was faint, but enough to be noticed. A neighbor working nearby heard it, later describing it as a sharp cry of distress. Inside the house, Clint was just waking up when he noticed movement outside the window. He peered through the blinds and saw his sister standing in the backyard with a man dressed in full camouflage. The two seemed to be talking, but something about the scene felt off. Holly's body language appeared tense. Her voice, though calm, carried a sense of urgency. Clint, still groggy, assumed it was her boyfriend and dismissed any concerns. A few minutes later, their mother called, frantic. She had just received a troubling report from a neighbor. Someone had seen Holly being led into the woods behind their house. Karen's voice was sharp with fear as she instructed Clint to grab a gun and check outside. By the time he did, it was too late. Holly was gone. Holly Lynn Bobo was more than just another face in her small town of Darden, Tennessee. Born on October 12, 1990, she was the kind of person who left a lasting impression on everyone she met. She grew up in a loving, tight-knit family with her parents, Dana and Karen Bobo, and her older brother, Clint. From a young age, Holly was known for her warm smile, gentle nature, and strong sense of responsibility. Her passion for helping others led her to pursue a career in nursing. She was a dedicated student at the University of Tennessee at Martin, where she worked hard to turn her dream into reality. Holly's caring personality shined through in everything she did. Whether she was assisting classmates with their studies, taking care of animals, or spending time with her family. She had a special bond with her mother, often helping out around the house, cooking meals, and sharing long conversations. Beyond her studies, Holly was a country girl at heart. She loved being outdoors, riding horses, and singing in church. Her faith was a guiding force in her life, and she was deeply involved in her local church community. Friends described her as kind-hearted and full of life. someone who never hesitated to lend a helping hand. She had a steady boyfriend, Drew Scott, and was looking forward to her future. Life seemed to be falling perfectly into place. But on the morning of April 13th, 2011, everything changed. In the blink of an eye, Holly disappeared, leaving behind a devastated family and a grieving community. What was supposed to be a normal school day turned into a nightmare, one that would haunt Darden, Tennessee for years to come. From the very start, the investigation into Holly Bobo's disappearance was plagued by confusion, delays, and critical missed opportunities. The first few hours after a person goes missing are often the most crucial. Yet in Holly's case, those early moments slipped away, leaving investigators scrambling to recover lost time. From the very start, the investigation into Holly Bobo's disappearance was plagued by confusion, delays, and critical missed opportunities. The first few hours after a person goes missing are often the most crucial. Yet in Holly's case, those early moments slipped away, leaving investigators scrambling to recover lost time. It all began with a moment of misjudgment. When Clint Bobo saw his sister outside with a man in camouflage, he assumed it was her boyfriend, Drew. But something didn't sit right. The two seemed to be arguing. The man's hand was firmly on Holly's arm, leading her toward the woods behind their home. Clint later recalled that he heard his sister speaking in a calm but uneasy voice saying, "Why are you doing this?" Words that would haunt him in the days to come. By the time Holly's mother, Karen Bobo, heard about the encounter from Clint over the phone, panic set in. She immediately urged Clint to grab a gun, sensing that something was terribly wrong. But by then, Holly and the mysterious man were gone. When law enforcement finally arrived, precious hours had already passed, and with them, the best chance of tracking Holly's movements. The investigation quickly grew chaotic. Authorities launched a massive search effort, bringing in local volunteers, bloodhounds, and helicopters. Holly's cell phone was tracked, leading searchers to various locations before it was ultimately powered off. Scattered belongings, including her lunchbox and a few personal items, were discovered along different roads miles apart, suggesting that someone had tried to discard evidence or confuse investigators. Witnesses later came forward with chilling details. A neighbor reported hearing a scream early that morning, but wasn't sure where it came from. Others mentioned seeing suspicious vehicles near the Bobo residence in the days leading up to Holly's disappearance. Despite these reports, law enforcement struggled to connect the dots. In those early days, the case lacked direction. Instead of treating it as an abduction from the start, some investigators initially speculated that Holly may have willingly left or had been taken by someone she knew. This assumption wasted valuable time. Leads that could have been followed immediately, like tracking down possible suspects in the area or checking surveillance footage, were delayed or overlooked. As the days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, frustration grew among Holly's family and the community. Everyone knew that the first 48 hours in a missing persons case were critical, yet those hours had been lost. While search teams tirelessly combed through rural Tennessee, law enforcement struggled to piece together what had truly happened on that fateful morning. As the years passed with little progress, frustration and fear gripped the small town of Darden. Despite extensive searches, media coverage, and public appeals, the case had gone cold. Investigators had questioned multiple individuals, but none led to definitive answers, until 2014, when an unexpected confession changed everything. In the initial phase of the investigation, authorities focused on various persons of interest, including known criminals in the area. One such individual was Terry Britt, a convicted sex offender with a disturbing history of stalking young women. Britt fit the profile of a potential suspect. He lived nearby, had a reputation for predatory behavior, and had been in the area when Holly disappeared. However, despite intense scrutiny, there was no solid evidence linking him to the crime. His alibi checked out, and investigators eventually ruled him out. For 3 years, the case remained at a standstill. Holly's family pleaded for answers, and the community refused to give up hope. Billboards with Holly's face lined Tennessee highways, and her family made public appeals, but the leads dried up. It seemed like whoever had taken Holly had disappeared into the shadows. Then, in 2014, the case took an unexpected turn. A man named Dylan Adams, already in custody on unrelated weapons charges, made a startling confession. Dylan, a local with intellectual disabilities, told police that he had seen Holly Bobo alive after she had been abducted. His statement was vague and troubling, but he didn't stop there. He implicated his older brother, Zach Adams, along with several others. Dylan's confession sent shockwaves through the investigation, but there was a major problem. His story kept changing. At first, he claimed he only knew that Zach had kidnapped Holly. Later, he stated that he had actually seen her tied up in a house. Then, under further questioning, he claimed Zach and another man, Jason Autry, had raped and murdered her before disposing of her body. The details shifted with each retelling, making it difficult for investigators to determine what was true. Zach Adams, the man Dylan accused, was no stranger to law enforcement. He had a history of drug abuse, violence, and criminal activity. His behavior after Holly's disappearance also raised suspicions. He reportedly made disturbing comments about her case, bragging that she was buried deep. Witnesses came forward claiming that Zach had threatened people who asked too many questions. Along with Zach, authorities looked into Jason Autry, a convicted felon who had been in and out of prison. Autry had ties to the Adams brothers and was involved in the local drug trade. Investigators suspected that Holly's abduction might have been connected to a drug-related crime, possibly because she had witnessed something she shouldn't have. Despite the chilling accusations, there was still no physical evidence. No murder weapon, no crime scene, no DNA. Just the inconsistent testimony of Dylan Adams, a man whose credibility was shaky at best. Law enforcement needed more if they were going to bring justice to Holly and her family. As the pressure mounted, the case took yet another twist. A new witness came forward, one who would lead authorities straight to the heartbreaking truth. For over 3 years, Holly Bobo's family lived in agony, clinging to hope that she might still be alive. Despite numerous searches, dead-end leads, and unanswered questions, there was no sign of Holly until one fateful day in September 2014. A group of hunters was exploring a remote wooded area in Decatur County, Tennessee, when they made a chilling discovery: a human skull lying in the underbrush. The hunters immediately contacted authorities, and forensic experts were called to the scene. And the results confirmed the worst fears of Holly's family and the entire community. The skull belonged to Holly Bobo. The discovery reignited the investigation with renewed urgency. Investigators meticulously examined the location where the remains were found, searching for additional evidence that could tie the suspects to the crime. Though the rest of Holly's body was never found, the presence of her skull was enough to shift the case from a missing persons investigation to a homicide. With the evidence mounting and pressure building, law enforcement arrested Zach Adams, his brother Dylan Adams, and their friend Jason Autry. charging them with Holly's kidnapping, rape, and murder. After years of speculation, the case was finally heading to trial. In 2017, Zach Adams stood trial for the abduction and murder of Holly Bobo. The prosecution faced significant challenges. There was no direct forensic evidence linking Adams to the crime, and much of the case relied on the testimony of key witnesses, including Jason Autry, who had agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. Jason Autry took the stand and provided a shocking, detailed account of what had happened to Holly. According to his testimony, Holly was kidnapped because she had allegedly witnessed illegal drug activity involving Zach Adams and his associates. Zach and his accomplices took Holly to a secluded location where they restrained and assaulted her. At some point, they attempted to kill her and believed she was dead. While attempting to dispose of her body near a river, Holly suddenly moved, indicating she was still alive. In a panic, Zach Adams pulled out a gun and shot her in the head, ensuring she was dead this time. Her body was later hidden, and the remains were eventually scattered or destroyed, leaving only the skull behind. Autry's testimony painted a horrifying picture of Holly's final hours and directly implicated Zach Adams as the trigger man. While some questioned Autry's credibility, given his criminal background and cooperation deal, his testimony provided prosecutors with the narrative they needed to secure a conviction. Despite the lack of physical evidence tying Zach Adams to the crime, the jury found him guilty based on the testimony, circumstantial evidence, and his own incriminating statements made over the years. Zach Adams was convicted of first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated rape. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 50 years. Dylan Adams, whose confession had initially reopened the case, pleaded guilty to facilitation of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Jason Autry, for his cooperation, received a reduced sentence of 8 years and was later released on parole. While the convictions provided some justice for Holly Bobo and her family, many questions remained unanswered. Who was the man in camouflage? Holly's brother, Clint, had initially described the man leading Holly into the woods as wearing camouflage, yet no definitive answer was given as to who that man was. What exactly happened in the first hours after Holly's abduction? The full timeline of her disappearance remained uncertain. Were others involved? While 3 men were convicted, speculation continued that more people knew about or participated in the crime. For Holly's family, the trial's outcome brought some closure, but no verdict could undo the pain of losing their daughter and sister in such a tragic manner. Her mother, Karen Bobo, tearfully addressed the court, stating, "We have waited for justice for Holly for so long. Nothing will bring her back, but at least now we know those responsible are paying for what they did." In the wake of Holly's case, lawmakers introduced the Holly Bobo Act, aimed at improving search efforts for missing adults, ensuring that no family would have to endure the same delays and missteps that had hindered her case. The case of Holly Bobo is a haunting reminder of how evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. A young woman, full of dreams, was taken from her family in broad daylight, and it took years to uncover the truth. But even now, do we really know everything? Was justice truly served? Or are there still missing pieces to this case? Could there have been others involved who were never brought to trial? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more shocking true crime stories from around the world. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant. This is Crime Tales Across Times, signing off.